where you're going to work, when you're not going to do it, and this new world order, this socialist dictatorship sounds great. Who's going to be the one running it? Our Constitution is the only one that allows us freedom as it originally was put together. We have raped it. We don't have law in this country. The law is how much money do I have because I can buy that law. The only alternative that you have is to sit out and keep fighting for your rights like Bo and a few other ones, and occasionally we go through the cracks and get through it. Most of the time you won't even get a hearing in front of the judge if you have something that's other than the crazy matter. How many in here get traffic tickets? How many of you know that that comes under the classification of criminal law? How many of you know if it's criminal law there has to be a victim? Did you know that? How can they, if they can't produce a victim, then how can they give you a ticket? You have to investigate these things and say, hey, that's not correct. We have a book back here and it's called Slay the Dragon. Remember this taxes we're talking about? Who is the dragon? Internal Revenue Service. We're going to tell you how you can prepare yourself so you don't have to pay taxes and keep your assets so they can't get to them. I want you to move them before you start doing that. Don't go crazy. Don't sit up there and say, I'm going to join the Tax Protesters Association because your name's going to be in top right on there when they come around to collect you. What we're going to do is just nonchalantly go with what they're doing. Follow their lead. They're doing the same thing. Every other crook is incorporating for Nevada right now. You're going to have a limited amount of us that can do it. They're going to wake up someday. So we're going to do it as we can do it, right? Then we're going to look around and see what else we can do. Money then is going to go to gold and silver, right? It's the only way it can happen. Gold is planned by them to suck in the people some more and run it up to 2,000 an ounce. I talked to some of the people the other day and they said maybe 3,500. There's 10 tons of gold going to be dumped on the gold market the next month. There were just 5 tons. Now where did it come from? You guys remember World War II in Japan? Japan went all over the Far East and plundered all these countries for their gold. Where did they dump it? Philippines. Marcos took his third cut for allowing out there. That's where he got most of his money. Not that he didn't, rape the rest of the country, but all of his asset was in his gold that he switched off. The Japanese are in serious trouble. They're dumping the gold. And so the prices are kept down wherever they are today, $380. When this runs out, then you're going to see something crazy because the stock market has got to come apart. If there's anybody going to be left out here working in order to buy it, and the illusion is wearing thin. The real estate market's already wearing thin. Try to unload some real estate. I mean, I've got property on the market now I got property on the market for 10 years. I own property in Costa Rica that I've been trying to sell. I bought one of them. Remember we were talking a while ago? You heard about Noriega and crew? When I was down there, one of the guys I bought my coffee farm from was the ex-president. And Rodrigo told me, his name is Odio, and he says, you guys are stupid in the United States. Don't you know what's going on down here? He said, Noriega got double-crossed. And the Colombians have decided to side with their buddy Noriega, and they figured they'll go ahead and supply the money to Noriega. He's only got 12,000 troops, and they pay him nothing. They got billions over there in drug money. But they said they're going to try to bring America to its knees. I.e., all of this other gamble that went on, and then you see what the parity is. However, Noriega, of course, has both sides against the middle. He has these signed agreements with Bush in order to take care of it, and the drugs were coming in. We got a lot of people. You see the I think it's Barry Seal on CNN lately, or in the movie? The pilot that was flying all the drugs up from Central America, bringing in tons of drugs. He's wanted to come forth now and say the truth. We have other pilots that are coming forth now, and we're publishing the information on how they were doing it. Most of them were coming into, when they first started, with Zapata Oil Corporation. Zapata Oil Corporation provided most of the oil during World War II, some of it. And Zapata Oil Company's dad was a guy named George Bush. The offshore platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. The drugs would come into the offshore platforms, go aboard the ships, come in as supply ships, given to the CIA to distribute to the mafia, i.e., come back to the Kennedys. What do you have? Robert Kennedy was indicted the mafia. Why? We wouldn't do that, right? He's got to be taken out. John was going to say that, plus there was a lot of other crazy things. What's the truth behind the Guyana massacre? Anybody know? I'm not going to tell you. It wasn't what you think it is. It was a Russian missile base. How do we take out a Russian missile base and act, cause it to be weird? It's in the books. The Palladians want to awaken us up to all of the lies we possibly can. Money again, let's go back to it. We got to get ourselves taken care of. We got to get a corporation. I don't care what your assets are. If you're out of the system at this point, great for you. Get yourself a bunch of silver coins. Silver's going to go to $100 an ounce. It's about $5 now. Buy silver rounds, Kennedy halves, and bags of old silver. Because when the collapse comes, we're going to have something to exchange. My basis is, this is one part of it. Remember our buddy that just came over here, this guy that's running the place over here right now? Gorbachev came to the United States a couple years ago, remember? Minnesota? Why did he come to Minnesota? Anybody know? Right. He took and signed a deal with $2 billion of the grain. They took all of the grain out of storage. What do you think they're talking right now? Another $1 billion. It's not going to the poor Russians out there. It's rotting in the boxcars. It's to get us into a position where we got to have what? No food, no money. That's right. Should we add more fun to it? We're not going to have any guns. Because what they're trying to do in any way they can is to give the illusion that guns are causing all the problems we have. More people are killed in a house because of butcher knives than they are with guns. Why do you think you have Brady coming up here? I'm in bad shape. Right? I want you guys to think logically, run real thick. Bo, answer me a question. If I shoot your brain with 3 bullets at close range, are you alive, sir? Guess what? You don't have a Brady alive. That's all been set up for part of the problem to develop to have you diverted to what's going on. He got killed. I mean, what are you going to do? The guy has 3 brains. He's shot. We got to do something about this thing. Now, that's part of the program. Get all the movies, all the television programs. By the way, how many did you know that who runs the television programs? By the way, Rockefellers are on the board of directors of ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. The Rockefellers put up the money for the National Education Association. They direct your books. You can't get a book into the system. We tried to send a book to the state of California. In order to put it into our school system, they said, we will consider it in 10 years. You know what the book was? The United States Constitution. Did you know the United States Constitution has not been taught in the United States schools for 75 years? Oh, I'm telling you, this thing's insidious as we keep giving you more and more. I want to know how we're going to get out of this place and what we're going to do it alive. We're going to go through this earth transition, the weather and everything else. We're going to have to be building domed houses. You and I are going to have to work and inform everybody, because they say if we can take back our Constitution and the rest of the world will follow the United States. If we can do that and come back into balance with God and the laws that were set up, which are nothing bad, we haven't done it at all this time, they will come down and assist. By the way, there are thousands of ships up there looking and monitoring us right now as we speak. Tonight, when you look up at the sky, look for the stars that are strobing red, blue, and green. Those are spacecraft. They're not allowed to come down here and use force. They're not going to come down on the 50-yard of the football field and say, look at me, because people will get panicky. We're not ready for it yet. The Russians, Cosmospheres up here, have taken out our entire space program. Why do you think they want to stop the space program now? Because the Russians have taken them all out. Because anything we put up for Russian technology that could have control of space, that has anything to do with the military, they're going to take it out. They have done it. I will share this with you because I think it's neat. Remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind? The last scene where the craft opens up and out of the spacecraft comes people tall up and down, and some of our astronauts and all that. Guess where the astronauts that are right now? They were aboard the shuttle that blew up. Do you remember the movie Star Trek? You move into a beam and it beam you up. That's exactly what they do, and they say, you're going to read this, when you read the Spacegate, you're going to read all the information. Now the cover-up is because they've been in contact with all of our government leaders, and our government leaders say, no, we don't want to do this to people because that would ruin, what, our economic system? You don't need money. It would ruin our political system. Yeah, I'm not going to take my job away. All these things are a great possibility, but we never needed it in the first place. We've been led to slaughter. They call us, I think it's a neat name, sheeple. We're a nation of sheeple being led to slaughter. Now, I don't know if you know about it. My father used to own a packing house, a slaughterhouse. And I worked in there. And if I would go bring the sheep into the chutes, for instance, they are so dumb, I would close the gate. You know, I mean, if I'm in the process of slaughtering one, they'll jump over the gate to get slaughtered. I'm seeing more people across the United States that, no, that can't be. They're going to jump over the gate to get slaughtered. We're here to tell you there's a way out of all of this. They will beam us aboard. They will help us and assist us, and they will protect us. Remember that protection thing? They say they will protect everybody that asks for it. And I know we get it, because sometimes when I'm driving the car down the road at night, you know the overhead lights? They go out about 300 yards away. So I know there's some beam. Remember that beam that went around the building? There's some kind of beam that's following us. You have to give them permission, and they want to contact each one of you. They have a brand new book that's coming out, and it says, E.T. phone home. Because they tell you, and we'll be out in about 3 weeks. Including in it are some tapes, because they say they've been trying to contact all of us, but we're too close-minded for some reason. We're so bombarded by, quote, you guys familiar with all the satellites running around the planet right now that are beaming signals? 6.66 and about 7.85. Are you familiar with those? Satellites over the United States that are set up to cause confusion in your mind, certain frequencies. Your mind is nothing more than a liquid crystal. And all they're doing is causing the vibrations which causes you unrest. So when they're ready to do it, they can cause an earthquake. They can cause this whole country to come down to be lethargic, asleep. You say, what's going on? Something's happening, and you don't know, but you don't feel good. Whole country's feeling that way. These cosmospheres are able to utilize the frequency method by moving and doing things to us we don't know. It's called ELF, extremely low frequency. People are coming forth with this information and technology. They have so much controls on us that it gets worse every day. I only have a couple minutes left before I let Desiree take on. And I'm going to tell you something else that we just found out the last week, which made me really sick. Remember I told you about the earthquake movement, the 14 inches? Remember the underground nuclear detonations we've been doing in Nevada? All of those? Caused the magma to be highly radioactive. It's seeping along all of the fault lines in California. In the Mono Lake area, the ground has moved up 10 inches, and our own scientists are admitting there's radiation coming along the fault lines. Now, how many of you have been to the big island of Hawaii and watched the flow of the stuff coming out, right? What do you think is going to happen along all the fault lines in California? Now, another problem. All along the San Andreas, the great country of California is the 8th richest country in the world, economically. How do we break its back? Trigger the San Andreas. The San Andreas fault can be triggered. There are nuclear bombs, satchel bombs placed clear along that can be triggered by the cosmospheres, just as an experiment. And in a lesson to our government last year, they did the one here last year. Proof of that, Dr. Wiley Smith, right here at Stanford, had his recording devices up all along here, and for some reason 4 hours before, there's a high frequency, ran the meters all the time. He was measuring sound coming from the planet. Did you read it in the San Francisco Chronicle? 30 minutes before the earthquake occurred, guess what happened? Meters went back to zero. 30 minutes later, the earth shifted. It was planned for a specific time to have the least degree of life at that time. There wasn't many people killed, were there? Right? Isn't that weird? That's how much control they have. Remember the plan? The plan was to merge the United States with Russia in this new world system. The United Nations is what that is. Who's the head of the United Nations by treaty? Russia. There are 3 factions right now, however, they're vying for power. The Soviets, they got the military capability. You have the Rockefeller-Rothschild cartel, the bankers, and then you have the political faction, the Zionists. The political faction. Billy Falwell, Or Jerry Falwell says he's a Zionist. Billy Graham says he's a Zionist. I don't know what these poor people in Zion, Utah think. I'm just telling you that that's the other faction who controls our Congress. 75% of our Congress is currently controlled by the economic situation. They tell them what to do. When I went to borrow money, if I borrowed, say, $10 million or $1 million even, the bank president said, look, my son needs a job. You want this loan? Give my son a job. Does that sound like a mafia? It's the same thing works on the big scale. Bigger and bigger you are, you take care of your family. There's 12 families that control the world. 12. Remember, the Pleiadians are telling us basically we're going to go through some geophysical changes, we're going to go through the economical changes. I've told you a bunch of information about the economics right now and how you can protect yourself. I suggest get a lot of reading and research it. The political situation, we are going to have to get our Constitution back. We have a Constitution kit in the back. And what it does is tell you what you have to do in order to let your neighbors know, because I can't do it, Bo can't do it, but all of us may have a chance, because you're going to get informed. What the Pleiadians say is knowledge will set us free of all of this malarkey. We got to know everything that's been done to us so we can dig ourselves out of this mess. And I want you all to do that. And we want to assist as much as you can. I want to do is what I can, and that's getting the word out to you. I will keep giving the information as it's being transmitted from the spacecraft, and they transmit to me. Yesterday was almost 40 pages. The journals run around 250 pages, so you can figure they do this roughly every 10 to 14 days. I get another journal of, quote, things that are going to happen. Radiation, problem. 1992 is the estimated time that the fallout is going to start occurring around the planet. There is a band of radiation from all the atomic bombs that we've been doing since we started. First atomic bomb dropped in 1907. You all knew that. Did you know that? To Dunska, Siberia. Colonel Young Husband, an Englishman, had gone with a group to Tibet and got the ancient documents in the 1890s from the monks, which told about Atlantis. They'd reached the same technology we have right now, the ability to blow themselves apart. That technology also said that the planet could only take 500 million people. So the great government, who was going then, said, well, let's just do it in advance. They were 1 hour in their calculations on flipping over the planet. They would have done it. That's when the first bomb went. Colonel Younghusband, after he went through that experience, they didn't drop it because they didn't have things to do it. They did it by an aerial balloon. That's also explained in the balloon. And they give you verification of everything I'm telling you. They'll tell you where you can find the source to prove what I say. Isn't that fascinating? What does it mean? Why are they keeping all this stuff from us and what we can do? Again, our Constitution kit says we ought to have freedoms. You can't get the Constitution in the book, even in the schools. 30% of the kids getting out of high school today are what? Functionally illiterate. Part of the program. We can't take over society if they think. If they start to think, let's put beam weapons on them. We got all kinds of things to take care of it because this group is so ego, so power organized, so insane. That's what I call it. It's insanity at the top. I got about 3 minutes, and I'm going to tell you something now is sci-fi. I mean, it's taken me a while to get up to this, but I'm going to let you know about it so you can identify how much and what's going on. I think you're reading in the papers where there's people that put out, I'll take you some, it's my own personal experience. I'm a good guy, I thought. Make me the president of a company, I liquidated. I'm a good soldier. When I become no longer a good soldier, what do? Destroy you, right? Put the thumbs on it. Well, all of a sudden out of clear blue sky, we have a president nobody ever heard of. Remember when I told you I was asked to be the finance chairman for? Well, they decided we're going to do something. We're going to put a president we absolutely control. His name was Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was never real in office. Now I'm going to tell you some technology that will blow your mind. Everybody in here are familiar with in vitro fertilization. Are you familiar with it? You take the cells and put it into a carrier or a host. They developed this system back in the early 50s where they could take 2 cells off of any person The DNA, or the map of how you made up, is in each one of your cells. Give a small electrical charge. It would multiply, double itself for 16 cells. Now, those 16 cells from that point on need a host, a food host. All right? I'm going to lead you through this so you see how it works. So they say, well, this is a humanoid. We need some volunteers. Now, who's going to be a volunteer for this? Well, maybe. Let's make it easier. We have a program. The E.T.s have been in contact with our government leaders all the time. How do we set up something in advance? A group called Majestic 12, Kissinger's ahead of that, set up a program saying, we know we're going to have a problem in the future, so we got to set the program in advance so we can blame the E.T.s. So what we do is we're going to go around and take some innocent women, hypnotize them, and you can do it instantly. They have that technology with frequency weapons as well as others. They would take these women, put those 16 cells inside, they all of a sudden were pregnant. Read the papers. 3 or 4 months later, mysteriously, the fetus is gone. The woman remembers this crazy flying saucer that came around, this alien that was out here, and what? Frantic. This is bad, right? We're starting to get it. You will read that if you investigate UFOs and you look at it. They also found out that they could find that the DNA structure of a cow was similar to the humans. Hey, that's one we don't have to worry about. We can just go do that anytime we want to, right? But it wouldn't take. So what they did, they took the semen from the bull and surround those 16 cells, put it inside the womb of the cow, i.e. we have a cow now that's the incubator for this, quote, human. After 5 or 6 months, they would take the cow up by helicopter, or one of the flying saucers, which we fly out of Area 51 in Nevada, take it back to the laboratories, take the fetus and all the blood, replace the blood with embalming fluid, take it back out and drop it in the fields, blame it on aliens. Look at that. That animal is not going down there. No animals will go close to it. Nothing. Oh, it's got embalming fluid in it. Nothing's going to do it. No insects are going to touch it, right? Meanwhile, they took the blood too. Why? The fetus itself had to be weaned off of its own blood supply because it creates its own blood after a few months. But it was living off of the cow's blood. Now, indirectly, you're eating steaks, so you're going to get the idea of the direction. I'm just telling you how this leads. Now, this great government then learned to take the pituitary hormone, which is the growth hormone, accelerate the growth of that. They have synthetics. They have synthetic blood right now. They don't want to tell you about it. They accelerate the growth, and within 2 years, they have a full person. Now, remember I told you a minute ago, your mind is nothing more than a liquid crystal? A doctor will tell you can go through a magnetic resonance machine that can see your entire body. They developed a camera to take a picture of your brain instantly, and it has all of your memory right now. If you're invited to Camp David, you will get a picture. All right, now I have this being that's took 2 years to make, and now I have to give it some intelligence. The difference between that and anything else is the soul. The soul means right and wrong. These people are called neutrals. They don't have anything. They're easily programmed. They're in front. The group, you put them out in front, that's what I want to have. I want you guys to look every week from now on at George Bush on television. Make a mental note of it because the new method they have, the Russians developed a method called robotoids, the United States method's called duplicates, and now the United States developed a real neat one, it's called synthetics. The synthetic is the reason why they coalesce. Remember all these things we're talking about? They've learned the techniques. We don't get this stuff. Remember the doctor that originally did this was doing it for mankind. If you got in an automobile accident and you lost yourself or something went through your liver or something, I can have a new one. Your exact DNA. You wouldn't have any rejection. You have a new heart. You can do anything you wanted to. That was a good idea. They skipped it. You can get Omni magazine 2 years ago and you'll see a whole herd of cattle. They got a big picture of it. They're all identical. You know, the scientists said, well, you're not going to experiment on people. Bull. What goes behind the scenes, you don't know. So, the information we're getting right now, how do you tell the difference? It's tough. Because they're going to take you out, they're going to take out the immediate family, and you have to go by the intent. Isn't that sci-fi? Bush is a synthetic. Watch him. Take your television camera, watch him each week. You're going to see one week he'll smile this side, next one this side. Because when they replicate them, it's like your tape recorder. Little small things. And he always has two people following him around. Because the method, the mental position of it doesn't stay together. Isn't that science fiction? I understand. That's enough for you guys to think about as we go into it. Now we're going to have questions and answers hopefully later on this evening. Now what I told you, there's one more thing to say before we go on this. When I'm going to introduce my wife, Desiree, because there is hope on other levels. They're going to give us all the information so we know what to do to get our Constitution back, but we need to understand our relationship to the spiritual nature of the universe. And at this time, I want to introduce Desiree, and hopefully everybody...
Denver in 1981. So a lot of the experiences that George has talked about, I was with him when, or with him at the time that he went through a lot of those, and a lot of the traveling we did was together. I wish to honor all of you for coming, for being able to sit through all of the bad news we've heard about, and is this another microphone?
All of them.
Oh, sorry. And because I know how difficult it is to listen to what we basically created as a civilization on this planet. I want to honor the speakers before me for having the courage. I mean, we've had 4 fantastic men come forth in courage and honor and patriotism to give you the information and the ammunition to go forward in your leadership potential to bring back at least our nation, if not the rest of our planet, under God as it was once intended. Thank you for that. I would like to talk about, what I would like to talk about is the spiritual transition, as I have experienced the spiritual unfoldment within myself, and as has been transmitted to us via the Pleiadian space commander, who is called Yorgo Series Hatonn. There are many beings. One of the other ones that George described was named Emmanuel, and the name means God with us. That energy being is now called Sananda. He is one of the commanders-in-chief, basically, of this whole spiritual transition. He promised us at the time he was here that he would come and prepare a place for those of us who returned under the God and back into the laws of God and the creation. They're telling us that basically we have either A, forgotten what the laws are, or we have with our free will chosen not to adhere to the laws. You have to understand what our relationship is to God and how we are related and what the whole universal function is, to understand why we are in the particular mess we are in on the planet. What George has described, and Bo and Cy and Dr. A, about the physical, the socioeconomic, the political, all of those are symptoms, basically, of the disharmony that we have created inside ourselves. Those are basically the physical manifestation of the unbalanced thinking and the breaking of the cosmic laws within us. And they have manifested outwardly. Now, the reason we're all affected and all responsible is because we have a planet of a third-dimensional frequency, of which they've described, that we feed the mass consciousness of. We each, through our thoughts, through our words, through our behaviors, and through our deeds, are participating and contributing either to the light of the mass consciousness or to darkness and ignorance of it. Right now, they've described the mass consciousness around the planet basically as a cesspool of mass consciousness. It's pretty dirty. And that is not, what they're telling us, it's not so much that we knowingly have done this, because if you knew the truth and the cosmic laws, you would not knowingly defy them. What they're telling us is that we have done so in ignorance. and through our ignorance, we have created the chaos. Because they have, one of the cosmic laws is cause and effect. And the law of God that said, basically, God does not punish, but your ignorance of the laws will punish you just as well as knowingly defying the laws of God in creation. So the reason that they said that they've been here since the creation of the planet, basically. They've engineered the planet. The third dimensional planet, or physical frequency, is sort of a schoolyard of learning. We have been given by our Creator free will to make a choice, basically. The choice is, will we come into alignment with God's will, or will we create unbalance with the adversary, which is also, the word Satan means adversary. Adversary is basically that which is against God, against the spirit of life, the co-creational spirit of life. We are a species in our infancy, experiencing over millions of years through our sensing mechanism, our physically sensing mechanism, monitoring effects and using those to make decisions about our lives rather than learning about the whys or the cause of why we are who we are and where we came from. So because we are like children going through steps through a schoolyard, and the adversary, or Satan, however you wish to view the Antichrist, energy basically is a challenge to your spiritual growth. Evil, I mean, there's a lot of myths especially in the New Age community. They'll tell you, there will be people that will tell you that evil doesn't exist. Well, on this planet, it's alive and well, and it's actually, the planet is pretty much bound, or it has the evil bound to it, I mean, to the planet. And in the ending time, going into the beginning cycle, it was said that evil would rule the ending time cycle. That's why the escalation of the hardship right now that we are witnessing. So we have to recognize our enemy. And the enemy, in all reality, exists within us. The evil exists because we give it the power by not taking responsibility for ourselves and our own actions and behaviors, and allowing the adversary to basically bluff us, con us, and deceive us in a lot of different ways. So the media and all of the leadership that we see representing us right now has been a manifestation of our own ignorance and our own development, basically. Because in the primitive state that we are, we cannot truly create as a co-creator in the universe of God's realm. We are basically in a program situation where we are in a belief structure, because belief structure is just based on what you've been told, not what you know. So what they're telling us is that you have to come into knowledge. There is no separation except that which we perceive. They're telling us basically about God, and that God is, number one, love. God is light, and God is all knowledge. Everything else that deviates from those things, or evil, is created by man through either his ignorance or directly by his knowing, by wanting to be in control or manipulation or greed or whatever. So it is by your desire to know God and to feel Him inside you and know His presence and to do His will. And I speak of Him as a He, but it's really a Mother, Father, Creator. It's not a one sex or another. It encompasses both. They've described the human being as God's divided thought fragments, male, female, divided thinking, expressing in His image His co-creational process. This is the opportunity we have in this transition to go into. So what it basically is we're moving in from an in cycle into a new beginning of cosmic consciousness, cosmic awareness beyond that which we have existed in under sensing reality, where we base everything on physical. We don't recognize our immortal soul. They tell us that reincarnation is a fact of life. We are immortal fragments of God. God does not destroy his creations. He can uncreate them, which all that means is you go back to the one. But basically, all of us, however you view God, are all wanting to know that connection. They're telling us that there is only one. They call it the law of one. There's only one creator, and there's only one. That basically each of us are fragments of that one. We are all related, fragments of the one creator. So we have to look at one another not as a separate race or a separate sex, but as individual fragments of God co-creating in the universe. And we have to honor one another and become united with each other in order to move gracefully through this birthing process, because that's what it is much like. It's the planet herself is a living being. She's not a human being, but she's going through a transition into and part of that transition is a cleansing process, because human being is a special creation of God in two ways, and that is that he has free will to make choices, and he has reasoning ability beyond other creations. So we have the choice about what we will do in God's creation and whether we will align with his will. And we also have reasoning abilities beyond other creations to allow us that co-creational process. So with that comes a tremendous amount of responsibility. Your spiritual integrity is being honed at this time so that you can then take more responsibility. It doesn't mean life gets easier for you. When you make your commitment in service to God and your country, it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it will be fulfilling, because you will know that you're doing the right thing and you will know who you serve. With that as your foundation, nobody can tear it down. Not the adversary, because remember, the adversary is a bluff. I mean, there's physical beings out there that can kill you. There's diseases out there. There's all of these things that are basically, they have power over you if you allow them to have the power over you. A really interesting thing that I want you all to think about disease, that means dis-ease in the mind. It starts with you. Dis-ease manifests in the body. If you find yourself infected with AIDS and in one way or another are cured of the disease and do not change the behavior that caused the disease in the first place, you will have another disease. So you have to know where the cause of your disease is. The doctors of the future will be learning to treat the cause from the mental, from the emotional, and from the psychological, as well as the physical. They will look for the cause. These will be the new doctors of the future, as I perceive it right now. Not just the physical symptom that they come in and treat. They will start looking for what caused the emotional block or breakdown within that human being, so that they can help you search for it, and then you can be cured from whatever disease you have created in yourself forever, because we basically manifested all in our reality. They're telling us we're responsible for it all.